Look at this. I got some Michelob Ultras next to me. We're going to open a 6-pack. This episode is brought to you by Michelob Ultra, the official beer partner of the NBA. And as the NBA season starts, one of the big questions I had was, what's up with this Houston team? They don't have a point guard. They have all this size. Who is going to be the guy they go to at the end of games? Well, this game, they lost. They lost in double OT, but it felt like a win for them. I went under for them on the 52.5. And the first thing I want to do out of my 6-pack, I felt like Houston. I know Jalen Williams wasn't in there. You have to mention that. There was no Jalen Williams. It was basically only SGA controlling the ball in the fourth quarter and both overtimes. But what the piece that I thought stood out to me, I was like, I've gotten into the UFC the last 7-8 years, and sometimes it'll be two takedown artists going against each other, and it becomes a battle of who is actually better at this one thing, right? So you have OKC, they want chaos, they want disorder, and they want everything to kind of run through SG at the end of the games, but they just want this chaotic, they're pressing, they're all over the place, defense, athleticism. And then Houston's basically going, yeah, we like that too, but we're just going to field this giant team of guys. Their starting lineup averaged 6'10". They had size, they had defense, they had power. And the rebounds, at one point they were like plus 12 in rebounds. But they were basically like, we're going to try to do what you guys do, except we're much bigger. And we have some really goofy one-on-one stuff we can do beyond what you guys have with SGA and Jalen Williams when he comes back. So they have Amin Thompson at the top, just trying to beat people off the dribble. They have KD, obviously. Jabari Smith, who I thought looked really good. And then Şengün, who was one of the big sleepers heading into the season with the Eurobasket, where he just was awesome. And it was a real question of, where do we put this guy? Well, he was toe-to-toe with everything. And I think, I don't want to overreact after one game. And I'm really trying hard not to. I've taken a lot of overreaction medication, just trying to chill out and watch these games and not think too much. But I really wanted to see, over everything else with this first batch of games, what is Houston going to look like without a point guard? Can they do this? Can they take turns just bringing the ball up? Can they get into their offense? And the answer is they could. I thought Thompson looked like he went up a level. Of course, he gave so much on offense and on defense, guarding Shea, running a lot of plays, getting to the basket. He was the crunch time guy at the end of regulation, over and over again, getting to the rim. And then his body gave out. He had cramps, and they wisely sat him for the rest of the game, which I think was a good move. But he went up a level. Şengün went up a level. Jabari went up a level. There's going to be games where, teams just pressure them, try to put miles on them, try to make it hard for them to get in their offense. We saw it a bunch of times in this one, especially with Reed Shepherd, who we'll go into in a second. But they convinced me tonight that they just bring so many things to the table that this one glaring flaw they have, I think guards matter. I don't think that's a hot take. We see this over and over again, especially on the road. Somebody to settle down offense, somebody run pick and roll, somebody guard the best guard in the other team. There's a million reasons why we are not going to have a championship team that just doesn't have a guard. You're always going to need one. But Houston's like, we're going to patch this together, and this might just work for us. And tonight, I really thought, their ceiling was a little higher than maybe I was anticipating. I think the over-under was 52.5. After what I saw tonight, it's a little bit health-dependent with KD, but man, with the Şengün and Thompson both going up a level, which they clearly did, that was my first takeaway, is like, I'm taking this team more seriously than I did 48 hours ago. And I think you look at the West, I had OKC and Denver at the top. I had Minnesota and the Clippers right underneath them. And then Houston, they're probably in that 5 spot, but then San Antonio's kind of lurking. And then you have Dallas, and there's another West team. I'm just Golden State. So it was just a question of who is going to actually go up a level. And I didn't think Houston could do it without Van Vliet, but maybe they can. So I'm at least inviting the possibility that this might be a mid-50s win team. So that's my first takeaway. I've just changed mentally where I had this team in my head. Second one, you had Chet, you had Amin Thompson, you had Şengün in this game today. And Chet had the big first quarter, and of course fouled out, but looked like the healthy version of what we were seeing down the stretch last year. And I had him as a top 20 guy. So top 9, Joker, SGA, Giannis, Luka, Wemby, Ant, and then Mitchell, Brunson, Curry. That's got to be your top 9 in some order. The next group had Cade and J-Dub and AD and Paolo and KD and Booker and Towns and Chet in some order, right? And the question for Chet is, and I probably have Chet high. I don't even think some people would have him 18. But the question for Chet is, can he start climbing up that ladder? I had Thompson in the high 20s and I had Şengün in the top 20s when we did our Ringer 100. The Şengün thing, I already am revising in my head because he looked like a top 20 guy tonight. OKC was trying all kinds of different things, especially like they settled on just Caruso just pointing himself right in his chest. And Şengün figured out all these different ways to exploit that. And on top of that, he hit 5 threes. If he went up a level and Thompson went up a level, I just think they have to be considered a real contender, regardless of the Van Vliet thing. And they can always fix that at the trade deadline. Chet, we'll see. Did some good stuff, but I thought the big winners of today, Thompson's two-way stuff, the stuff he did against SGA for 3 quarters was ridiculous. And then, and the fact that he was getting his offense a little more, that started last year, him trying to get into the basket. But all right, that's enough nerdy basketball stuff for you. Next thing on the 6-pack, Reed Shepherd. So we were thinking maybe this guy was going to be the next Mark Price. Look, it's one bad game, and he's going against probably the worst possible team for him to play, right? He's the opening night. It's NBC. He's going against SGA. He's going against Dort and Caruso and Kason Wallace. Like, this is a nightmare team with some pressure on him. And they need him because he's the only actual guard who can get them into their offense, who can run little pick and rolls for them, who could beat guys off the dribble and kick back out and things like that. He was awful. And we were thinking that maybe he could be the next Mark Price. He looked like Brent Price today. And I actually was texting House about how I can't wait to see Reed Shepherd on the Wizards. And he's like, we had him. He was Brent Price. They need him to be, needless to say, way better than he was tonight because they actually need him. They need some sort of point guard. And if it's not him, they're going to have to go trade for somebody and make some moves. But he was relentlessly targeted on defense. He just got, I thought, demolished by Wallace in a couple points this game. He would get heat checky sometimes, and it was inappropriate because it was both he was playing terrible, but also had a lot of confidence, which I didn't mind. But it was really rough. He's the guy to watch on this team. I feel good about everything else that they have. We'll see with KD at age 37 how he ages over the course of the year, how many games he misses. But I think Shepherd, these first 20 games, can they build him up? Can they shade him more toward Mark Price and less toward Brent Price would be the thing I want to watch. I can't imagine the way he looked tonight. That can't be somebody you rely on in a playoff series, I don't think. So that is my third take for the 6-pack. The fourth one, the NBA and NBC. We were back. It was a great day around Ball Rock. It was a kinder, gentler, happier coverage of the NBA, of the National Basketball Association. Just pleasant, very reminiscent of their Sunday Night Football in America, which is just basically a big love letter to the NFL. And this is something that I think was very important to the NBA as they went into these media rights things where you had the TNT guys really critical, which I support, but really critical of the league the last couple of years. And then the ESPN guys, we don't have to talk about ESPN, the kind of first takeization of how they treat the NBA. So the NBC was just like a pleasant hang with a song that we like. And what's interesting is Round Ball Rock was underrated. Then it became properly rated. And then over the last year when NBC got basketball, I was like, oh my God, we're going to get Round Ball Rock back. And it actually became overrated. It was like, all right, Round Ball Rock's fine. It's not like this amazing. We don't have to talk about it all the time. And then it started and it was like, this is the best. I love it. I love Round Ball Rock. It was great to have back. Good to have Mike Tirico back calling basketball. I thought Jamal Crawford was fine. Like the thing I liked about him in a 3-man booth, you need somebody to kind of lay out and not try to get off too many shots. And I thought he found a nice little balance and actually had some decent points. And then Reggie Miller was Reggie Miller. He did have his first argument with himself in overtime. So that was the official start of the season. He thought Jabari Smith traveled and moved his pivot foot. And then they showed the replay. He's like, he moved his pivot foot. And then they show it and he didn't. He's like, he didn't move his pivot foot. I think he invented that. The self-argument during a broadcast is a Reggie Miller staple. The weird thing, though, it really struck me today that TNT doesn't have the NBA. Like, think about every opening night with this massive, the Barkley show for an hour beforehand, then the rings. And it felt like our entire lives, that was the opening. I know it's probably 22, 23 years, but it was really notable how different it was for the opening night. It almost didn't feel like opening night. And then the game started and it did. But yeah, RIP TNT and welcome aboard Round Ball Rock. So we'll see how it goes this season. Speaking of NBC, fifth thing for the six pack. So they had this Michael Jordan thing. They've been playing it up a lot, and they called it like degrees of excellence or insights in excellence or something. It basically just turned out to be an interview with Mike Tirico that they probably filmed for 2 hours, and they're just going to cut segments out of. I can't think of a single thing that happened during the halftime thing. But it's riveting to watch Michael Jordan. And I realized like, it doesn't really matter what he says. His insights, his observations, his thoughts about the league, it just doesn't matter because anything he says, I'm captivated. He was like, he told some story about he rented a house and there was a basketball court. I don't even know what happened. And I was like nodding like, yeah, oh, this is great, Michael Jordan. I think the next one, he's going to come back and just be like, yeah, I went to dinner last night. I ordered a steak. I got it medium rare. I had 2 glasses of Pinot Noir and then I paid the check. And then they're like, that was insights of excellence from Michael Jordan. And I'm like, that was great. Could watch him talk about anything. So he might be the first person who's ever been on a pregame halftime show where I literally don't care what he says. I just like having him around. It's just nice to have MJ aboard. So congratulations, NBC. Last one. OKC, their fans booed Kevin Durant lustily again. He left 9 years ago. Think about how long that was. That was like, if you take 9 years and then add another 7, that was the last time the Yankees won the World Series. That's how long ago 9 years ago is. 9 years ago, did I still have a show on HBO? No, they might have canceled it by then. But yeah, 9 years ago, really long time. The Ringer's 10 years old. And they're still booing him and they still hate his guts. And on the one hand, I love it because I love the real fans and that's just how they feel. And I would never tell them not to feel that way. But on the other hand, it's been 9 years and they have a new team and they won the title last year. And SGA is now the best player in the history of the city. And at some point, this is starting to feel petty. There might be more things going on, quotes that KD said over the years that I've missed. But it made me think like they're just never going to forgive him. And I totally get it because I felt the same way about Roger Clemens, which I think my second or third piece for page 2 on ESPN was called Roger Clemens is the Antichrist. And Roger Clemens was even in the booth last year for Nesson for a Red Sox game. It was either this year or last year. And I was just pissed off that they even let him in the booth. And this was a guy who left the Red Sox in 1996, almost 30 years ago. And I'm still mad about it. So I get it. Listen, I'm not one to judge, but I just want to point out, like, he did have an awesome 9 years there and they did win the title. And if there was ever a time they were going to be like, you know what, you've had a great career. Let's let bygones be bygones. It would have been tonight, but it wasn't. So this is just the way it's going to be forever, I guess. They're always going to hate him. And it made me think like, and I think I've talked about this before, but this really banged it home. I always thought he was going to work it out with OKC. Like Cleveland forgave LeBron. LeBron's at a different level than KD. But for the most part, you always feel like it's eventually people get older. They forget. They don't remember why they're mad. And then, John Skipper was on this podcast once. Like as time passes, you forget why you had animosity for things. But I don't think it's ever going to happen with this. So if he's never going to be in good graces in OKC, and I don't think it's going to happen with the Warriors either. Definitely not Brooklyn. No way in Phoenix. So you have this situation where he might retire and just not belong to any team. And I really genuinely thought it would be like years later, be like, OKC would be like, all right, fine. We had 9 great years. You win the MVP here. You were a great story. We'll take you back. But he might never happen. This happened with Clemens. I don't know what Clemens, all these years later, is Clemens belong to the Red Sox, the Astros, the Yankees, like Blue Jays, like kind of nothing. But he's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best pitchers of the last 50 years, and he made a ton of money, and maybe that's all that matters. KD signed this new extension, and now he has the money record. He's made almost $600 million. It's the most money any basketball player has ever made. And I guess he's going to have to settle for that. But he, unless this Houston thing goes fantastic and he ends up being a guy in Houston, he's just not going to have a place to go back to after he retires. And I do think that's mildly important. Like I see with the Celtics all the time, even people like Antoine Walker come back and, are lustily cheered. Everybody that's ever had a meaningful moment with the Celtics that I can think of, they've been able to come back. And I don't think this was ever going to happen with KD and OKC. So it just kind of struck me tonight, like, wow, this is forever. That's it for the six pack. That's all I got for you. A lot of observations from one game, and we have 82 games for every team. This is the first game of the year, but a lot of moments are worth playing for. The ones that taste best are served cold. And whatever happens this season, catch every moment with Michelob ULTRA, the official beer partner of the NBA. They're getting fans close to the game with a chance to win courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, custom merch, and much more. Michelob ULTRA, superior, is worth playing for. Enter now at michelobultra.com/courtside. Michelob ULTRA courtside 2025 to 2026. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents. 21 plus. Begins on October 1st, 2025. So it already began. Ends on June 30th, 2026. Multiple entry periods. See official rules at michelobultra.com/courtside for free entry. Entry deadlines, prizes, and details.